Hello everyone, this is Katie Colleen here. Welcome back, Colleen Clan, or if you're new, then come join the family. Today I'll be showing you how to make Cleo de Nile's mummy wraps and earrings from Monster High. I actually made a fear leading uniform a little while ago and I did a Dracula cosplay with that, but I figure why not cosplay some of the other fear leading girls? So let's get into it. Starting with Cleo's mummy wraps. So the fabric I'm using is a white 4-way stretch fabric. You want to make sure your fabric's stretchy and you also want to make sure it doesn't fray. Now the fabric I do have is white and I need it to look like it has aged in an Egyptian tomb for many, many years. So I'm going to be doing coffee dyeing for this actually. So I'm taking out my trusty dye pot and I'm just dumping coffee grounds directly into this huge pot. And I am setting it to nearly boiling. And since the fabric I'm using is a synthetic fabric, I'm also gonna put some vinegar in the mix too. I left the fabric in the dye for about 30 minutes, and then I took it out, washed it out, let it dry overnight. We have brown, crusty looking fabric. So now let's get into some of the patterning. It looks like I'm gonna need a mummy wrap for one of my legs, one of my arms, and for my neck. Cleo does also have wraps on her upper thighs, but my fear leading uniform goes all the way down to my knees, so I see no reason to make those. This is super easy to pattern. So starting with the leg piece, I'm gonna take the distance around my ankle, then the distance just right under my kneecap, and then the distance between those two measurements. I'm going to draw that out on my paper. I actually only have to draw out half of those measurements because I'm gonna cut this on the fold. I'm gonna repeat that process for my arm wraps too. Take the measurement around my hand, the measurement around my bicep, and then the distance between those two measurements. Then finally, the same thing for the neck. Then I can lay out our patterns onto our fabric. These are all lined up on the fold, so when I cut them out, they will be twice as big. And then we can get to cutting out our actual wraps that look like mummy wrappings. So I'll be cutting out some bias tape for this. Bias tape is cut out at a 45-degree angle, and this allows the fabric to kind of bend around the curves of your arms and legs. And all of these strips are going to be 2 inches wide. I dyed about 1.5 yards of fabric. In the end, I only needed about 1 yard, but this will take probably a little bit more fabric than you think. Let's get to sewing. So I'm starting on my leg wrap. I'm gonna lay that out and then kind of make a weave pattern out of all of our bias tape. Basically just a crisscross. It's kind of like, you know, when people make apple pie and they have the top of the pie is all crisscrossed. It's exactly the same thing, but for mummy wraps and we're sewing. After I have everything laid down, I can pin it together and then I can sew down all of our strips to our base piece. And I'm just sewing these down with a straight stitch on my sewing machine. After all the strips are sewn down to our base piece, we can fold this over like a taco and sew the back seam. The back seam, I am going to be using a zigzag stitch because I do want this to stretch. For both the leg wrap and the arm wrap, I am hoping that I can just kind of slide these on, and because it is a very stretchy fabric, if we sized it correctly, it should just kind of slide on like a knee-high sock. One thing to mention about our bias tape as we're sewing it down, I am not finishing any of the edges on this. So I'm not folding over the edges or serging the edges of any of our bias tape bandages. That's why it's really important that you pick a fabric that will not fray. So for our arm piece, that is going to be pretty much the same story as the leg piece with just a few little changes. First of all, when we are sewing that big back seam, for the arm piece, we want to leave a hole for our thumb. Another thing with her arm bandage is she also has kind of 2 loose bandages hanging off from the wrist. So I'm going to take an extra piece of bias tape and I'm just going to pin that in to that back seam. And then we can sew that all up with the zigzag stitch, flip it inside out. That is our arm bandage. Moving on to our neck bandage. The only difference with the neck bandage is we do need to be able to get this on and take it off with a separating closure. I can't just pull this on over my head. It's not gonna fit. So I looked through my stash of closures and I really wanted to close this up with a zipper in the back, but apparently I just don't own any separating zippers. No zippers, we're gonna use snaps instead. So I hand sewed 3 snaps onto the closure of the neck piece, and you can see here how I was able to put it on. And that is it for the mummy wraps for Cleo. Let's move right along to how I made the earrings. Looking at Cleo's earrings, these are large, very large. When you're taking something from an animated medium and trying to bring it to real life, sometimes you just have to realize when things just aren't going to translate to real life correctly. So I wanted to make these earrings as small as possible without losing any of the detail. I still wanted the same number of gems on her earrings. So that means I need to figure out how big my gems are. That's gonna be our determining factor for the size. I printed out a few different sizes, just reference pictures of Cleo, and I went digging through my craft stash, and I found some rhinestones, I found some beads, lots of different things to play around with. In the end, I decided on this combination of beads and rhinestones. I'll be making these earrings out of craft foam. This is 2mm thick craft foam, very easy to use. I just cut out our earring off of that picture. I'm gonna trace it out onto the craft foam and then cut it out. Now, taking a closer look at Cleo's earrings, there's almost 2 tiers to them. In some animations, your earrings actually have openings on the inside and the gems frame around those openings. In other animations of Cleo, it's just 2 different tiers to the earring. But I did still want to include that detail. So I'm actually going to be cutting out our earring piece twice. Once as the base, and then another one that has the openings cut into it. Now that we have our foam earrings, I tried a few different things. First of all, I tried covering these in Worbla. Worbla is a thermoplastic. I really like it because it's really easy to use and then you don't have to sand down any of your edges. But this is just too small to get Worbla to look good. I just felt the Worbla wasn't really picking up any of the details that I'd put in. So I won't be using Worbla for this project actually. I'm just gonna stick with the craft foam. So I'm using some E6000 glue to glue these together. Admittedly, this is kind of heavy-handed for gluing together 2mm craft foam. This is a very strong glue. You need to use it in a well-ventilated space. So I glued both pieces of our earrings together, and then I left them overnight to dry under the most expensive foam press. And they are a little bit rough around the edges, okay? These could look better. So I'll be sanding them down. I'm taking out my Dremel tool and I'm putting a drill bit on this. Since these earrings are so small, the drill bit is gonna be the only one small enough to get into all those tiny little corners. I'm gonna sand down all the edges and all the inside edges to our little openings. And while I have my drill bit out, I'm also going to drill a hole into the top of each earring, and this is how the earrings are going to eventually attach to my ears. After all the sanding is done, I'm also going to use my heat gun and apply some heat to these earrings. Using the heat gun just smooths out any of the sanding fuzzies, and it gives it a really nice, clean texture. So here's how our finished base earrings look. They are ready to paint and decorate. For primer, I'm using Mod Podge, and I'm using 2 layers of that. Then for painting, I'm using acrylic paint. I have some metallic gold, I have yellow and brown, so I can mix a few different colors together. I'm gonna do 2 layers of that acrylic paint. I also want to add a little bit of dimension. Since I put in so much work to have 2 different layers of this earring, I'm gonna go in with a darker color for the back tier of the earring just to give it a bit more dimension. After I am done painting, I'm gonna seal everything up with a final layer of Mod Podge, and we are finally ready to add all of those gemstones that we picked out at the start. So some of my rhinestones have the adhesive back where you just pull off the back and apply them. Some of them I needed to glue down, and then I also had some heat fix rhinestones, so these use a rhinestone applicator. After all of those had been added to the earrings, let that dry, and I'm gonna show you how I attach these earrings to my ears, because it's probably not what you expected. So I'm going to take some thread and string it through the top of our earrings, through that hole we drilled. And this looks kind of like a Christmas ornament now. I am not going to be putting these into an ear piercing, and there's a very good reason for that. This is a fear leading uniform. When I wore this outfit as Draculara, I did some cheer routines, and there is a reason that when you see cheerleaders doing their thing, they are not wearing ginormous dangly earrings. This is absolutely a safety risk. You can tear your ear out. So in order to get around that, I am taking these earrings and I am hanging them on my ears like little Christmas tree ornaments. And I know this looks silly, just trust the process for a moment. Not tight at all. You can see these are very loose. They could very easily just kind of be pulled off my ear if they caught on anything. And then I'm gonna add the wig. And once I add the wig, it's actually really hard to tell that these are not actually going into an ear piercing and that they are hanging over my ears. So that's my little hack for cosplay earrings that are a bit safer if you're gonna be doing anything active. Alternatively, if you are wearing a wig, you could also just pin the earrings to the inside of your wig, and that would do the same thing, and then they wouldn't be on your ears at all. If you would like to know how I made the fear leading uniform, I do have a separate video for that. I show how I sewed it together start to finish. So let me know what you think down in the comments. Are we Team Draculara? Are we Team Cleo? Or should I make yet another fear leading girl cosplay? Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye!